So our panelists, if they'll come forward, all of them, we have Dominique de Ziegler from France, Peter Kent from the USA, Milton from Hong Kong, Atai from Israel, Talia from the US, and Jonathan from the UK. That's as fancy an introduction as I'm going to give anybody. And of course, myself and Yesha are the panelists over here. Yesha has volunteered to be the main question shepherd, and I will start the section promptly by saying, let's talk about medical tourism, how to go international with your online marketing activities. Anybody, what would you consider the first step in developing an international program?
So, out of Israel are coming some interesting companies in medical tourism. Most of them are targeting Russia, and they're doing quite well. The first thing I would do is to, in understanding my target market, is to understand where they're browsing. For example, in Russia, there's Yandex as a major search engine. In some countries, Facebook is pretty popular in most countries, but as we saw, there are some exceptions. And I would try to also look at leaders in medical tourism that are targeting the same target markets as I aspire to target. And I would also, get up to pace in regards to what they're doing. So these are the first basic two things I would do. I would try to understand the target market, where the consumers there, what are the trends, the behavior trends, the search engines, even search terms that they may be using. We saw the keyword, the AdWords keyword planner, and I would look at the existing leaders that are targeting this area, what they're doing. So this is like my quick snapshot situation analysis about that target market. That's what I would recommend.
Other thoughts on this?
So two thoughts, and one relates really to understanding the target audience, and it comes not from an internet perspective so much, but from a cultural perspective. And I suggest you do a small exercise and look at ads. There's an ad for Herbal Essence shampoo. There's a woman, she's in the shower, she's making sounds that I've never heard women make at a shower, and I go to the pool and I hear a lot of women take showers many, many times. It doesn't happen, and that's very racy. But when you see a similar ad in Eastern Europe, you don't see that. The sex is gone. You see a knight in shining armor, and there are hearts in the air. So the culture is very different. And if you bring one ad to the other culture, you will fail miserably. That will be sad. If you bring the sexy one to the more, not that you will because it's IVF, but it's just to make an analogy that is a little bit extreme. If you bring the values that are a little bit more advanced and more racy to a more traditional culture, they will not like you, and vice versa. They will just think you're very traditional and out of date. So don't assume, basically, that everyone is the same, because even if everyone has the same reproductive system around the world, it doesn't mean that they share values and goals and symbols. That's one thing. The second thing, and I've seen it time and time again in my research, is how trust is important and what a phenomenal driver it is of behavior. So again, it dovetails a little bit on the cultural point, but you want to get people to trust you, and you need to figure out what would be the trust markers in different cultures. Because if you have great content, but they're not resonating with those people, and they're not telling them, this is a person I can trust, he has the authority, he will take good care of me, then they will likely not come. And it's obviously much more of a challenge in a cross-cultural context.
Well, I think Dominic and I are the clinicians on this panel, so we talk a little bit about the more practical aspects. I think, of course, setting up a nice network, knowing knowing how to reach is very, very important. But to begin with, obviously, like all business, you have to look at your strength and what you can offer. So there's only usually there's two things. One is that. Of three things. One, is offering something that people cannot have. For instance, like surrogacy, India is doing very well because, apart from America, there's no real surrogacy country, it's a country in the world. And sex selection, so America, especially LA area, doing very well, for the Chinese patients because, the whole of China and Southeast Asia, apart from Thailand, and cannot do sex selection, and they have to go to America or to Thailand. So understanding what you can offer and what they cannot have. So this is a desire. So the first is what they desire, and you give it to them. So afterwards, of course, then we talk about how to reach them. Secondly, obviously, is the cost. So some things collectively, a certain area can do cheaper than others. For instance, Singapore government has been doing medical tourism for a knee hip replacement for Europe. And I think, a lot of the, selling a lot in German and Belgium, to do hip replacements in Singapore rather than doing their own countries. And, and then the third is, of course, you have to do opportunity and you have to have your expertise. So I think begin, the first thing you want to do to establish medical tourism is to identify your strong point, to identify what attracts, the medical tourists will come, and then, of course, we have to use all the tools, that e-commerce will bring us.
There are comments to add on a clinical standpoint too, is that medical tourism in many ways is reflecting some laws and restrictions. Many of them are ununderstandable and should be said outright. Donor egg is forbidden, and you don't have to go and look very far in this particular country. Donor sperm is authorized in Germany. Donor egg is forbidden. This leads to medical tourism, and I don't think it is right. It's a commonly accepted medical treatment, and it should be said. Medical tourism should not lead to patients not receiving the proper care, so therefore we should indicate clearly to our patients on discussions as well on websites what kind of services we offer. Medical treatment, medical tourism should often, as for donor egg, encompass a medical follow-up which ought to be done properly in the country where the people reside. And some of the issues need to be addressed, and some of the issues need to be told, because ethical restrictions that lead to unethical practices should not go on forever, I think.
Jonathan, something to add to the other 4-5 commenters?
Yeah, just on the tool side of things from a social media point of view, probably important, very important to look at the audience and the amount of people that are on each social network and which social network is important in different countries. They are different in terms of how they provide that kind of information. Facebook is very good, for example, and will give you a country breakdown in terms of numbers of users in an individual country, so that's a very good steer. At the moment, Twitter is very poor. They're even very poor on giving an overall number in terms of their users, but I suspect that following their IPO flotation on the stock market, that will probably improve, so we'll have some more clarity there. And LinkedIn probably somewhere between the two. They do publish stats. They are a quoted company, but perhaps not to the degree of Facebook. So I think to sort of reiterate Talia's point, actually, in terms of the audience is important. Where are your patients, and then choose your social network according to that.
So we have 3 minutes left of our allotted 12 without taking more time. Does anyone want to come forward with comments or questions? And to summarize, I think we had some very good perspectives here. We had some quantitative analysis from the standpoint of where people are on the internet and elsewhere. We had some more qualitative evaluation of cultural and other markers, trust markers. And then we had the very good point about knowing what you're offering to the world market that's distinctive. And lastly, also some legal perspective. Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, Yes, so I have a question about the language barrier that may, because if you run a clinic in the US or UK, you obviously use English as your major language, but I'm from Poland, and in our case, most of our social media are in Polish. So do you have any ideas how to overcome those language barriers, both in social media and other online resources?
Yeah, after having employed over 100 employees in the internet business, and you're talking about internet operation task, you need to take a task leader, or it can't be the same as you. If you want it to be run seriously, you want to have a dedicated manager. He or she may do other things, that's up to you. But at least according to that operation, that task, that mission, the management, that employee sees that the management is considering this mission by allocating time and resources. Allocating time and resources was mentioned a few times, and it's not the same people. It's not the same person. It's either outsourced or in-house, but you want to really think about who you want to recruit, what is the job description, and what is your requirements, and mainly do a good job in who you recruit.
I might just add one point. I mean, we said, I mean, somebody talked about the limits of, prospective randomized trial. I mean, the issue of medical tourists is really one in which there are no prospective randomized trial. And this is one in which we need to know more about it. Website type of surveys and possibly improved type of surveys through the website are really urgently needed.
I want to add sort of on a practical thing that has, when you come to international marketing, it's not just the web that is available for you. And I want to follow up. I think I had a corridor discussion with somebody, I think with you, basically in Spain, wanted to bring people from Germany to the clinics. So it all started up with a plan. How many people do you want to bring? And what's the total amount of money you expect to get from them? And once you identify that, then you can say, okay, 50% of that potential forecast income or revenue, I'm going to invest in marketing. Then what I would do, because it's a new field, I would actually appoint an agent. And that agent, which is a person who is locally in Germany, have already traveled to your clinic, know you, will serve as the key point for the people who are interested. Then you can use the web to bring these people to the person. So that combination. And the nice thing about that, it works well, that person gets compensated, everybody's happy. Doesn't work well, you replace them, you get another person. So it's not just the web, you need to cooperate. I mean, it's clearly, I mean, this is a huge purchase, a huge decision. So it's good to have a person behind that.
Okay, we're a minute or two over. Any other comments quickly or questions? Okay, one more. Jonathan? I'm sorry, Milton.
Well, it's all very, very nicely said, Yasha, except I think when we come to, like the legal issue, because a lot of times you got to look out for this so-called agency. There may be laws, like I don't know about the German law, but for instance, if you look at the Hong Kong law on surrogacy, anyone who partakes arranging surrogacy can also be prosecuted. So so you can identify an agency wherever you want your source to come from, but that agency itself may not be terribly legal, and so you run yourself into and other troubles. I know you may not get yourself into big trouble because it's that agency that got prosecuted, but still, if you think of this way, I think most of the time we end up using a very retail model. You can, because you go and see. You go to Paris, Milan. 15 years ago, they have 3 Japanese-speaking sales ladies. And now they have 5 Mandarin or Putonghua speaking ladies, no Japanese speaking ladies. So this is how marketing changes.
Last comment from Jonathan quickly.
Oh, with websites,
You're on, you're good.
sorry. With websites, it's a lot easier, the practical point in terms of the technology, because you usually can, well, you can definitely code so that you can place, say, a country's flag for the language so that people can switch the language on a website. Social networks, not that sophisticated yet, whilst they cover plenty of countries and different languages. That does mean that you either have to create them in the separate social networks for the specific languages that the countries that you're marketing in or that your clinic is based in, or you could just take a bit of a risk, which is the easier option from a time point of view. As I stated, there's a lot of management involved with this, but if you went with a single page, maybe your own language, or perhaps the language that the majority of your patients speak, then you could rely on people switching the language in their browser. I think as technology becomes better, I mean, Chrome is a pretty good example. I was only doing this morning using the Chrome translation feature to switch languages on a Facebook page. So you can do it that way, but I would say preference is probably to set up multiple pages, but then of course you've got the issue of resources with that.
Okay, very good. Excellent comments. We're going to move on. We're a few minutes over. I'm going to take a little time out of the next topic because I didn't see quite as many hands. Conversion rates. How do we do more than simple bring people to websites and social media sites? How do we get them into the door and ultimately to the right treatment, notably in vitro fertilization?
I've been handed the mic for some reason. I've been talking about this for the last 2 days, so I might end up repeating myself, I guess, but I've been handed the mic. So conversion, it's a huge issue. Actually, I touched on this fleetingly in one of my little presentations. A big challenge to conversions is just getting to the lead as soon as you can. I helped to create a very large legal marketing website. We had somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million pages. This was a few years ago when this sort of SEO trick would work quite well. It doesn't work quite so well anymore. But unfortunately, we had 7 different law firms, and we would channel leads to these law firms depending on where they were in the country. Each law firm owned a certain number of states, and they would get those leads. And some areas were shared, and we would sort of divide it up randomly. But these leads would land in their inboxes, and one of 2 things would happen. Some of those law firms were really on top of it. One law firm in particular would contact those leads literally within minutes, or at least they would review the lead. Somebody would land on somebody's BlackBerry. They're attorneys, they have to have BlackBerries. And the lead would be reviewed, and if it looked interesting, that person would get a call literally within a few minutes. On the other hand, some of these attorneys, I don't know why they bothered signing up, because they weren't using the leads at all. Now, the attorney who was calling leads within minutes, his conversion rate obviously was much, much higher. And he decided, he and I sat down one day and looked at the numbers. We decided we had lost literally millions of dollars worth of leads just because people weren't getting back. And I had a similar experience with a mortgage company. They actually promised me, they told me, yeah, we call these leads, we use a service, a lead comes in, and that person will be called within 3 days. Well, between that point and the point at which we got this new website set up, they stopped using this service. I don't know why. And it turned from 3 minutes to 3 days. And they were complaining about the quality of leads. They said, we call these people, we leave messages, and they won't call us back. And I would explain, no, because they've already had a dozen other companies call them looking for their business. And so this is a huge stumbling block. It's silly, really. It's such a small thing. Well, it seems such an obvious thing, but I understand for a lot of companies, a lot of small law firms, small clinics and so on, it's a problem to actually find the right person who can talk to the lead and create a process whereby that lead is followed up on. But from a conversion standpoint, I think that's one of the biggest areas I talked about landing pages earlier on, but it's just merely getting to the leads and working the lead properly, especially for people, for organizations that are not naturally marketing organizations. Somehow
Panel,
you have to...
5 minutes left on this topic. So.
Sorry. Somehow you have to become a marketing organization and deal with those leads.
Yeah, I agree with Peter totally on that. With regard to social networks, two things just to make sure of. Yes, it's very much about engagement to build your audience and to communicate with potential patients, but somewhere in there, you do need to have those call to actions, such as book an appointment and that sort of thing. So on Facebook, for example, you can make an individual post around that, or you could tweet that out, or you could put that on your LinkedIn company page. But you've also got to make yourself really accessible, so make sure that all your contact information is there on your social network profiles, as I was talking about yesterday. One tip in particular would be on Facebook, which I noticed a lot of clinics have set up, is a message button that you can enable. So if you haven't enabled that message button, definitely do that at the top of your Facebook page. And then that enables people to contact you anonymously in private, and then you can respond to them by email or via message over Facebook.
3 minutes left. I want to leave some time for comments from the audience.
Yeah, just this point is a huge topic. Maybe we can elaborate it for next year. It's a very important one. It's a little bit more advanced for most of the IVF clinics at their current state. Just a few points on that. One, a lot of IVF clinics still don't even have CRM software like Salesforce. So they basically get their their leads by email, and it's managed by Excel or God knows how. But that's one of the first point. That's something that I would be glad to see more IVF clinics doing, in 2014 and 15. Having a proper CRM, so the entire funnel, you have online leads going into opportunities, going into sales, things like that, and you can track. You can also send the lead straight from the website with what's called the lead source details, so you can understand, is that coming from organic or paid or Bing or an email link, so you can know exactly later if that person converted to a real client. You can also see originally where they came from. Today, the IVF units are running quite blind about that. Second real quick point is you saw that a lot of IVF clinics at the beginning of their intention, at the beginning of their purchase decision process, they want education, they want information, they want also empathy, as Alexandra pointed out. Think perhaps of, instead of just telling them from the point of research straight to come contact us, think of a middle step. For example, taking out an ebook, a PDF. What are the things that you must know about IVF? Or listen to what these 5 women have to say about their IVF treatments. Get creative about information that is free, that you can give out to people in return for getting their lead information, email and phone, etc. And you'll win, last sentence, you'll win twice. You'll get more leads because you're doing it in a very elegant way, and you'll be warming up these leads to convert them. That's it. So think about that middle step of educational information, educational marketing.
30 seconds for Talia.
Okay, Talia. I want to think about this not in terms of conversion, which is an online term, but actually in terms of the move from attitudes to behavior. Someone had the positive attitude about IVF and the positive attitude about coming to your website, and the behavior is for them to schedule an appointment. And that transition is not simple. We see that all the time. I teach consumer behavior at Wharton, and I teach that, the class from last week, so that's very top of mind. One intervention that is often done is facilitating this and giving people hints as to when to do this, because you can always schedule an appointment. I mean, you can call today or next week or next month, so why do it now? Something which has been done in the context of flu shots or mammograms is to say, get a mammogram by Thanksgiving. Why by Thanksgiving? There's no reason, but it gives a deadline. And when there's a deadline, people adhere to the deadline. They're more likely to adhere to that. So you can say, call us, or you can say, call us today, or make a point of calling us this week and tell us about. So it's very simple. It's just changing the words in the message you're sending out there, but it's very clear and it's more of a motivator and it has a bit of a deadline to it, and that could increase conversion.
I just wanted to add one more tip around this, and the title of the tip is clicks can be bad. And I want to give you a particular example. I just had a campaign on Facebook to get people to buy into some conference or something like that. And the ad and the text was exactly the same, and the picture was different. And one of the images, which actually was a very unique images, brought us many, many, many more clicks. Really, they got maybe 10,000 clicks, and the other one got an average of about 1,000. So that was very good in terms of pulling people in. Unfortunately, none of the people that liked the picture actually bought anything. So it was a complete waste of money and time. So really, sometimes your ad is just too good. But and really, you don't need that. I mean, you really want to maybe do a bad ad, because if somebody bothered to click on a bad ad, they must really want the business, right? Because if it's a good ad, it's interesting, it's cute, you get the clicks, but you don't get the business.
Okay, I'm going to cut it there. I see nobody standing coming forward, so we're going to the next topic. You have to be assertive if you want to ask questions. Panel, we have, when we get to 22, that will be the end of the next topic. I'm going to be the taskmaster here. SEO versus SEM versus social media, where to invest your marketing money. I'm going to start this with the first comment. This question to me is a little bit like asking the question, doctor, how do I live a long time? Do I quit smoking? Do I get a good diet? Or do I start exercising? And the answer is all of the above. In the long run, I'm going to say in a very short summation that I think a medical practices, private practices website is your online clinic and your online store in essence. And in the long term, an optimized, informative, educational, patient-friendly website is the most important cornerstone that you build everything off of, including social media and SEM as well. So in the long run, if I have to pick one, that would be my favorite, but the other two are very close second. Panel.
I've got it. Yeah, I agree entirely. It's hard to just say, well, you should just do one. I was chatting with somebody just before this session about this very subject. The problem for you guys, I think most people here perhaps don't have a background in marketing. And marketing is all about experimentation. And so you have to try a lot of different things, see what works, and follow the money, as it were. What works, you continue doing, and you try something else. So it's very hard to say, should you do one or the other. I do think SEO, so those three terms, I'm not sure if everybody's clear on that. SEO, search engine optimization. SEM probably means pay-per-click marketing. It means search engine marketing, but people define that term slightly differently, but it's typically covers pay-per-click advertising. So, wow, if you've only got to pick one, yeah, but the thing is you can run a pay-per-click campaign very quickly and easily in 20 minutes. You can set up a pay-per-click campaign. Setting up a good pay-per-click campaign probably takes longer. That's the problem. That's why there's so many bad pay-per-click campaigns. I think a good foundation, though, is to have a well-optimized website with content. I do believe you need content. It is an important thing. But also you need links. So I think PR, as I mentioned before, is going to become much more important. And it's a good thing for the site. I think that's sort of the foundation. You start with a well-optimized site and then start adding things on. If I've only got to pick one, that's what I would do.
4 minutes for other comments.
Fighting over microphones here. Yeah, I mean, despite being massively passionate about social media, I would agree with Ron and Peter. I'd still say that the website should be the core of your marketing strategy. It should be the home, the center. Social media can work in parallel with that, and it can also be great at driving traffic to your website. In terms of content, I think, and strategy, you need to really to be clear about what you're using each of your social networks for. And like I said yesterday, if you're short on time, then pick one, but be very clear about what you're doing with that particular one channel. So if it is Facebook, for example, you might want to use that to provide your white papers, to provide advice and health advice and that kind of thing. And perhaps Twitter would be more conversational, more customer services orientated, more interaction, answering potential patients' queries and that kind of thing. So be clear about what each one's for, and then you might say LinkedIn you're gonna use LinkedIn and the others as well, but perhaps LinkedIn a bit more to drive traffic to your website. So try and have an objective for each one. But at this point in time, things might change, but in this point in time, definitely your website would be the center, but that's not to sort of diminish the importance of the others.
Some questions or comments from the audience, if anybody would come forward while the next speaker is preparing his remarks. Yes,
I'd
Itai.
like to make just a very short personal comment. I mean, in this trip in social media marketing, which is unknown territory to me, at least it was until this morning, until yesterday. The one thing I heard that really pleases me, less tricks, more PR. And if that is true, I mean, it's probably very good news because it leads to good investment in terms of.
I would echo that by saying the best marketing is a true story.
I'd like to highlight my opinion. This question needs to come into context of your time constraint, because you want to achieve certain targets, say within a year. You might want to show it to your boss. Maybe you're the boss, and it's a target you're putting for yourself. And it needs to be put in context of your constraints and your opportunities. Now, the most controllable channel that you can scale and that you can control and it can be the biggest driver for your revenue, and not only traffic, as I mentioned, is AdWords. This is your biggest potential because right now, as also was mentioned, the professional level of the AdWords campaigns of most of the IVF units is maybe at level 4 out of 10, and it can be 9 out of 10. And some of the fact that clicks are expensive is almost irrelevant because it matters if you have ROI for your investment. I can pay $10 per click and still be making a lot of money from this channel if I'm converting those clicks well. So don't be afraid of the high cost per click. Another super tip that I think, check out the site similarweb.com. You can put up a website, so you can look at your biggest, your leading competitor in your country, the most successful IVF clinic in your country, if you have the web address, or if you want to look at, for example, in California or Australia, there's some advanced IVF clinics that are doing a good job in marketing. You put that URL there, and there's various versions. It's a lot better than Alexa. It shows you a breakdown of exactly where they're bringing the traffic from and in what proportion. You can understand their marketing mix, and it's very effective. You can see their landing pages, you can see their most popular pages, and it's really good business intelligence, competitive intelligence. Similarweb.com.
Questions, comments from the audience, please, anybody? One comment, I have a little different point of view on pay-per-click advertising. I think it's important in the beginning while organic rankings are taking time to accumulate. However, over the long run, in our experience, if our practices are getting more than 15 or 20% of their traffic to websites from pay-per-click, it shows their organic is not working well enough. There are limits to pay-per-click, and one of them, I believe yesterday was showing heat map that showed click movements over a web page. They've done the same thing with eye tracking studies, and they see that only about 35% of web users, of internet search engine users, actually even see the pay-per-click ads. So pay-per-click is especially good in the beginning while your organic is taking time to build audience. Over the long term, I think organic is a much more powerful tool.
Hi, Daniel, I'm from Colombia. I don't know about anywhere else, but I wanted to actually give some input about AdWords. And what's happened is people don't click AdWords in our business, since they believe that we're trying to sell them a baby. So they don't like it. They don't like it that much. So whenever you try to do one of these campaigns pushing your product, you'll find that either you can pay a lot per click, but you'll find that the revenue or the ROI is not going to be as good, since a lot of people won't click, or they just skip that part. They don't even look at it because it's emotional, as you were saying yesterday. It's a very emotional thing. So we're playing with a baby. Well, we're not playing with a baby. I mean, we're playing with the hopes of a couple trying to get a baby. My question goes, what can you do to make one of these ads or one of these marketing campaigns work in this kind of context?
I want to take that for a second, because I think this is really the art of dealing with keywords on one hand and the context and the text in your ad. Because it really is a very creative process whereby you have to experiment. So let me give you an example. If you think, I mean, what's the beauty of Google? I mean, the beauty of Google is that you get the people at what Google calls the magic moment. What is the magic moment? They are actually looking for information. So if somebody types in IVF, it means, or fertility or something like that, it means that at this second, you have a little window for them. Now, the text, a creative text would be, listen to Jill tell her story. Period. That's not aggressive. Or the emotional roller coaster of Jill. Something like that. And you maybe use a Spanish name if you want to tailor it. But this is really artistic, because again, if you think that the process is about first connecting, understanding, etc., get them there. Get them to see a movie. You know, see the short movie, 2 minutes, and if you want to hear the rest of the story, send us your email. People will do that because you already gave them something, and you gave them something, you want something, that's okay, and then you can continue. And start small, just in, the city. And allow just, 20 clicks, see if it works. Short advice.
I can almost guarantee you that AdWords can work for you, even though it hasn't worked so far. I'm serious, guys. It's not possible that it doesn't, because it works everywhere. Don't get it wrong. I want you to have the right picture here, the right business picture. Also, I agree with Yesha. It's also, listen, AdWords is a channel. It doesn't mean that you have to do a hard sale in order to be on AdWords, or if I'm AdWords necessarily, I have to make a hard sale. For example, you can think of more emotional aspects, creating, for example, a PDF, top 10 things you must know, or other emotional aspects, and have that as a soft conversion, and then you build a database. PPC is like a one-night stand. If you get their email, it's like a relationship, okay? You want to get, you have that one-night stand to get their email, and then you can be in communication with them, okay? So look at your strategy. You can tweak it in the context of the same channel. If SEO works, PPC works because the user is looking at the same screen. If PPC works, SEO works. Most people, by the way, they don't know the difference. Most common people, they don't know the difference between this is paid and this is organic. Also, Google, the background color that it's using for ads is becoming brighter and brighter and brighter, and people don't know it. So maybe in conferences, marketing people like us know, people don't know. So that's another angle to prove that if PPC and SEO works, they go together because it's in the same user screen. Now, who managed your AdWords? Did you manage it? Who managed it? Someone in your clinic? Okay. As my friend here said, most of you guys are not from marketing, okay? So, and what happens usually is you take someone in your IVF clinic, and what happens realistically, they have many other tasks. And as you become more sophisticated with marketing, they have more tasks. That becomes, he becomes, or she or he becomes jack of all trades. take care of this website here. Do our PPC campaign here. Go in the SEO, do that. Oh, we have a bug here. We have a broken link. They can't be experts like this, okay? Analogy, I can't go to a doctor that's expert in IVF and other fields, okay? So that's a fatal flaw. There's no way that it's going to succeed if you take someone that is not very professional about it. It's a very competitive space.
We have 18 minutes left. More comments, questions from the audience? If not, we can move on to anybody else want to comment on this? I think pay-per-click advertising is like exercise. It also needs good nutrition and no smoking. They all have their role.
SEO, by the way, is definitely works. SEO is a great investment. Don't get me wrong. The challenge I have with SEO, that it's hard to control. As you saw and you will see, go back home and do a search in IVF related keywords. You'll see most of the screen is taken up by ads, and we heard that we know that users can hardly tell the difference. Organic results, you'll start seeing Wikipedia, New York Times, blah 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 blah. For you, it's hard to, even if you have good results, for you now to triple your business results from that is very, very difficult. For you to triple your results in AdWords, you can do it within 2 months. Okay? And SEO, it can take you 3 years. So you make the choice.
Anything else on this topic before we talk about emerging online channels? Future of IVS services marketing. What will the future bring? What are the possibilities? What are the untapped potential? Dr. Nader and others have addressed to some degree. Does anyone have any thoughts on that, either from the audience or from our panel?
What exactly does he mean?
I think it's up to us to define it.
Not sure what's happening here. Emerging online channels.
Phone apps. I would call that maybe an emerging online
Okay.
channel. That's one example.
So I think what I presented earlier is probably an example. It's
Right.
saying, well, patients want to be engaged, patients want to talk to one another, patients want to see good content, patients want to be involved, and patients want to have reminders. So they have an app for the reminders, a forum for talking and whatever, and I don't know because I'm a doctor. And what I'm saying is let's incorporate that. Let's have a platform that gives them all of these things in one place and in under one auspice, and a trustworthy one, which is linked to your clinic. And I think that's a great opportunity, basically. I think a lot of clinics are understanding that, and they want to have a conversation. So I speak with the doctor, and he says, yes, if I connect with your platform, actually I have on my team, I have doctors who write papers, who write blogs, who write on New York Times, and we have great content, and we can present it to people, but they don't do this in a social media sort of way. They definitely don't do this in forums. So I think the future is actually creating opportunities, such as the one I'm offering, but I'm sure there will be others, to create an opportunity for these platforms for an integrated view of physicians. And I think physicians are increasingly open to that because they understand that the world is changing, that everyone is, as you said, glued to their phone, married to I fight with my husband. He said, you love this thing more than you love me. You're definitely more connected to it. It's
And you
true.
say it fondly, of course. You like that.
I say fondly, very fondly, only fondly. So the patient relies on their phone for the reminders, etc. They rely on their forum for their interaction, and maybe also on their social media for that. And they rely on their physician for other things. So I think the challenge is to integrate for the physician to be there, but in a way that enables them to be first and foremost a physician, and not to have, not to do part-time working at learning what SEO and SEM is, and going into AdWords, etc., and doing all these things. Not that they're not important, of course they're important, but to streamline this for a physician, not to have them become an expert in all of these things.
I think one of the key messages from this conference is that the future is very much mobile, and perhaps just throw a few stats on the current situation and maybe imagine a bit towards the future and how things will develop. In the UK today, 24 million people will access Facebook on their mobile. That's how big it is. That's pretty much nearly half the population, 60 million population in the UK. And when we're seeing new social networks, we mentioned Vine yesterday, which is a short-form video application owned by Twitter, and Instagram, both growing incredibly fast. They're pretty much mobile only. There's not a lot that you can do on their websites, particularly Vine. Vine just points you to the place where you can download the apps, and on the Instagram website, you can't even search for people or photos. So probably new social networks will be mobile only, and the existing ones will just become more mobile orientated. So think of your audience. Your audience is going to be accessing your content, whether that's website, whether it's social network, by mobile.
So I have an interesting emerging online channel, which we didn't talk about. And this is basically organizing a digital meeting. And you can use something like Meetups or Eventbrite. And these are places where people are looking to meet other people, period. And you can publish an event there, say introduction to IVF or something like that, get a hotel room or even bring it to your office. And it'll get people to listen to you and talk to you, and it doesn't cost much. I mean, it's in some places it's free, in some places very minute, just publishing. So this is like a completely new way to do the same thing. So that's one thing. Another interesting option that is emerging now, and that's quite interesting, especially for people who want to bring in people from other countries, is using Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts today is becoming a tremendous tool. What used to cost thousands of dollars in terms of video conferencing is now completely free. And the nice thing about the Google Hangout is that you open it up, you get the audience, you tell them for 15 minutes what you are, you can take them to a virtual tour in your clinic, make it easier and simple, and also it records that and turns it into a YouTube movie. And the whole thing is free. So I think that's, but again, to do that, you need to be, you need to have your digital marketing hat on, and you need to experiment, and you need to be sure about, so make sure you know what you're doing before you sort of embark into new channels.
I'd like to make a couple of points. We've been talking about pay-per-click, organic search, social media. We're putting everything into little buckets. But really, the internet is more of an ocean, and there's an awful lot out there. You just mentioned Hangout. There are more sort of traditional webinar tools, such as WebEx and GoToMeeting and so on. I think you mentioned earlier on essentially content marketing, creating books, white papers, booklets, and for everything there are just so many channels. So you can create a little booklet, 25 things you're going to learn on your journey through IVF or whatever. You can distribute that through document download sites. You can create a Kindle book and put it into Amazon. So for everything there are just there's just so much out there. It's a lot more than these little buckets. And of course the problem is, how do you deal with it all? And in most cases you won't be able to deal with it well unless you can find somebody that is focused on it. And I can imagine two extremes here. I have one client who was complaining recently that his progress online was too slow. And I said to him, yeah, because we talk and then you disappear for 6 months and won't answer my emails. And so he's an attorney, no focus whatsoever. He wants things to happen, but he has so little focus, nothing will happen because he won't make decisions. The other end of the spectrum, a 40 to 50 attorney law firm that I work with in Denver, we actually set up an in-house web marketing department. We went out and hired somebody with the right skills and put him in the house and gave him the tools he needed to make things happen. So yeah, there's a lot out there, but you've got to be able to focus on it and make it happen.
4 minutes for panel, 4 minutes for audience. Should we move on to the next topic, which is cooperation versus competition, synergizing other IVF businesses? I see this a lot in the IVF world in terms of working with OBGYNs who also do intrauterine insemination and other fertility treatments, how do you collaborate with them without stealing their business, but also getting their tougher cases that you probably deserve? Any comments on that or any other aspect of synergy? Physicians, this would be a good opportunity for you to answer the questions, I believe.
I think a lot of times we brought up to be working as individuals, unfortunately. So a lot of this social connection, social media, even the internet, and why one of the reasons why you said they make comments about IVF centers and IVF and doctors as a whole. You generally, is not very, very conversant, on webbing, on connections, because, we are all taught to be mavericks. But on the other hand, I think that we have to come to face-to-face with a new age, and that is also one of the reasons why we started this conference, IVF Live. Seth and I, that we have interaction between the IT industry, and for us to learn, for you to learn what we want and what we need, and for us to learn, to use, the media to connect to each other. I think that not only between centers we have to have synergy, but we, as a lot of people have alluded to, and Talia and Alexandra also said, our synergy actually is more with our patients. And I think, for a few years now, I have been, thinking very hard about, using apps to connect to patients. And I think that's what we need, and as far as, center, gradually we'll all be together. You look at Geneva, took them about 10 years, got all the Sydney IVF, got all the IVF units together to join together, and now it's a very, very big item. From center to center, there are things to be shared. I send patients to Spain, to Thailand, to America if they want egg donation. And the things I cannot do, I do send them away. And so as the media world, as the IT world merge into our individualism, we will be expanding, I think, in years to come. And next year's meeting, I'm sure the clinician will be saying different things altogether already.
I want to leave some time for Dr.
Yes.
Arredondo from San Antonio.
Yes, I think that this concept of cooperation with competition is one of the ones that do have much more room for improvement. I can speak only for the United States, but obviously probably throughout the world. And it is because the software of the mind of we physicians, unfortunately, first of all, we have to remove the ego out of the equation, which is hard to do. Number two, it is the word co-petition was created at the Harvard Business School in order to see the positive things that you can do by competing and cooperate. For example, simple things. In the United States, from 100 women or 100 couples that do need IVF, only 15 are getting it. Only 15 are getting it. So it's so silly to fight, because it's very easy to cooperate with somebody in another country. No, the challenge is to cooperate with the guy that is in front of me, and there are so many rooms for you to be able to do that, because if from 100 people only 15 are getting it, instead of trying to fight to get a bigger slice of the pie, why don't we focus our energy and make the pie bigger? And when you make the pie bigger, everybody wins. Educating it, trying to do a yearly festivity where everybody gets information about what are the roadblocks to go and see a physician, which are fear, number one, fear of the unknown, fear of the cost, fear of the pain. So if we break those barriers by removing the fear of the patient walking into the office, I think that we can do a lot of good for everybody and benefit each other. The challenge is going to be within ourselves to remove the ego and try to cooperate.
Dr. Ziegler? Yes.
Just while we take the time to get rid of the ego, which may take a little while, one of the fantastic things I realized in this conference and in the new world that we're stepping in is that actually those type of collaboration can be established first outside of just across the street, where there are some concerns and limitations because of competition. And building up networks with people who have similar philosophies, similar use of data for experience would actually validate the concept of synergy and will lead to new players having larger databases, even if it's with people who are further away than across the street. And this is what is now open for us.
Time for one last comment?
Yeah, just I'd like to offer another approach to seeking partnerships. Partnership and collaborations at the source is I have something valuable to give to you, and you have something of value to give to me. Okay, so you first need to think in your analysis, in your organization, in your marketing, what can you give? What is distinct and that you can give to a potential partner? Let's say, for example, it's content. Let's say you have someone on your team that's a great blog writer, and he's very efficient, or she's very efficient. Once a week, there's these great blogs, and they're really popular. You are shown here that I can search, for example, for IVF search results looking at blogs. And then I can, in this example, I can take my content. This is a low-hanging fruit activity, something that exists, and I can offer it to other bloggers so I can get more links and exposure. I'm taking something that I already have, okay, and I'm distributing it. So think of what value. Another clinic might have data, right? They can maybe create anonymized data into a special report, give it to the PR or news outlets. Think of what a value that you can create, maybe IVF in Africa report, special report, that can give you something in return, hopefully in the Pareto approach, something that I create, invest 20% to get 80% of the income and not of the outcome and not the other way around. Think of where that sweet spot is in your organization, in your capabilities.
We are now over. Does anyone have further questions or comments? I want to encourage you to use the time to come forward from the audience. Anybody? So maybe we can summarize by saying I think there's been a lot of repeated themes here. And if I could put my own spin on it, I think the digital age is really just a locomotive and a train that carries the value that we in this business provide. And the value is really based on not just medical outcomes, but patient experience. And it starts at websites, it starts at social media, it starts perhaps at ads, but it really culminates inside the practice. And I think the important thing is for us to keep in mind that the entire patient experience is key here. Education, communication, a part of that. Digital media afford that. And I'm plugging Dr. Arendondo's presentation in part because I was the advocate for bringing him here. He's also the last speaker in our program tonight, and I want to encourage you to stay because he has a wonderful point of view on patient experience. You know, you're getting old when the things you've been saying for 20 years either start to come true or people start to believe them, which is happening to me now. So I want to say that it's delightful to hear Dr. Ziegler talking about the value of PR coming back to how we started, and it's all about the experience of education and value in trust building. So I think the digital age supports that, but in the end, those are our fundamentals we all provide.